Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about modulation on your back brake. Modulation on both brakes actually. Here I've installed some 160mm discs. I've done a video on how to, you can see that after watching this. But this is the video where I go through the reasons why, how you would do it, what you need to do it, and what benefits it does for you. So stick around. Okay, so something I've been wanting to do for a while now is to upgrade the brakes. Chose the bumpiest road to do this on, but as you can hear, there's no sound from the brakes. And what I've done in my case is put in some 160mm rotors. And if you stick around to the end of the video, you can see the links to how I did that. So today I'm going to answer the question, why would you want to change your discs? There's some benefits to do it and there's some negatives to do it, and I'll quickly run through them. So the benefit of changing your discs for a larger size is to actually improve the modulation. So that refers to pulling it down on the trigger, or pulling it down on the lever I should say, and instead of being digital like on or off, you actually gain more modulation, and modulation is the feel for the brake, so you can apply more pressure or less pressure without it locking up the wheel quite so easily. Now this is done because of the torque of the disc pulling through on the pads, so it's to do with the leverage. Okay, we're just going over a bumpy spot here. I'm riding off road. If I apply a little bit of brake pressure, I don't exactly want it to go immediately into a skid. This also applies to being on the road in the wet. So having more modulation means I can press the brake lever, really bumpy, I can press the brake lever and it doesn't actually pull the brake on fully, and I get more compression with my fingers. I have to pull the lever further back towards the bar because it's trying to slow down a much bigger rotating disc. Is why all sports cars, racing cars, the likes put bigger discs on to reduce the amount of heat, because if you've got a small disc and you're applying a lot of force to it, the heat builds up on the disc and glazes the pads, and the pads work less effectively to the point where you would have no actual braking force, or you can boil the mineral oil. On a scooter that's hardly very likely, it's not really something we need to worry about. We kind of don't have to worry about issues such as that unless you're on a really long run or a steep downhill descent. Possibly people in like California, but here in the UK I don't really need to worry about that. But the reason I've done it is because I just don't want it skidding quite so easy whenever I pull the lever. So giving me that extra travel on the lever allows me to apply the force on the brakes to be more precise, so I can slow down more gradually. How do I do it? How do I increase the brakes? That's what you want to know, that's what we're here for. So to increase the brakes, we're here and we're up. So to increase the force on the brakes, disc size, we obviously have an issue with the calipers in the way. Now we can't go massive on our discs on these. I mean, they start off at 140mm or 145 possibly, and we can put in 160 tops, because the caliper that needs to go over the brake, any taller than that and it will hit the tyre, because the tyre overhangs the caliper on such a small rim. So once we know we can just put 160mm brakes in, what discs should you consider? Well, there's a vast range of discs out there, and I've done mine on a budget, I'll be honest with you. You know, I wanted to try it out before I went full on with like 100 quid's worth of Hope discs on this thing. So you've got to be careful. So we've bought some 160mm discs. So now we know the actual size of the disc. We need to change the size of the caliper mount, because the caliper can't sit where it existed to sit because the disc will fail it. So to increase the caliper mount, we need to buy caliper mounts that are for bicycles. Now it's pretty easy. You can buy a 160mm caliper mount for a bicycle, but you're probably thinking, well, there's a different thing here. There's post mount, there's IS mount. Well, we use IS mount, and that just basically means the screws that go into it hold the caliper bracket to the actual bike, or in our case scooter, are side mounted, M6 side mounted bolts. So we've got IS mount. Now we need to see, well, if I put in 160mm in my caliper bracket, I actually need to buy the next size up. Now the reason for that is purely because if you buy 140mm, and they're always measured on the rear, the higher size, if you buy 160mm, you'll end up with the same brackets you've already got, because they just reverse them round, whether it's front or rear. So you actually need to buy 180mm brackets, and the 180mm brackets, when put on the rear of a bike, are actually 160. So I've got 160mm mount now that actually fits the rear of a bicycle. You just install them on a scooter, because the arms on a scooter are both the same. They're identical front to back. Well, they are on the vset. So I've got identical arms, and I've put them on, and that's how the scooter rolls. There's pretty church here. Right, so now we can get a bit of a lick on. This is a bit smoother along here. You can actually, that's the two-wheel drive side of it. You can actually see how well that shock's doing that I installed earlier. It's much nicer, it's a lot smoother than it used to be, albeit that the bounces are still coming through a touch, and that's mainly through my rear foot I can feel. Here's those brake discs in all their glory. You can see no rubbing, no hitting on anything, which is obviously a concern when people say about putting bigger discs on, that you're going to hit everything because you're naturally wider and you're closer to the ground with a disc. Now these snail discs that I've got on here are 2mm thick, same thickness as the original. Ideally you'd like a disc that's 3mm thick, but I couldn't get any on a budget to do this job that looked quite so good. But there you go, they work an absolute treat. No rubbing, no nothing, which is beautiful.